I've seen a few questions about the combat phase in firebending, so let's talk about it. There's only 5 phases in a single turn, and combat phase is probably one of the most confusing. Because even though there's 5 phases in a turn, the combat phase itself is divided into 5 different steps. And in between each of these steps, there are moments of priority where players can cast spells or activate abilities. The first one is the beginning of combat. It's where we first initially go to when we're moving to the combat step. This is where things that would trigger at the beginning of combat would first go on the stack before we can declare any attackers. This is the first chance that we have to be able to cast spells or activate abilities that care about combat. But this is the last chance we can cast any spells or abilities before we can officially declare anyone attacking. The next step is declare attackers, where the first thing that anyone can do is declare what creatures are attacking. After the active player has declared all their attackers, then any triggers that would have gone off can be put on the stack. This is where we would first put the trigger for firebending onto the stack, which yes, this is a triggered ability, not a mana ability, so players can respond to this. Which after all triggers have been put on the stack, then players gain priority, and this is their last opportunity to be able to respond with spells or abilities before we declare any blockers. Next, we move to declare blockers, where just like the attacker step, the first thing that we do is announce any blockers. Any players that are currently being attacked can declare any creatures that they want to be blocking those creatures that are attacking. After all blockers have been announced, then any triggers that would have occurred would get put on the stack first. Then players gain priority, and this is their last opportunity to cast spells or abilities before we go to the combat damage step. Then we go to the most complicated step, the combat damage step. First, we check to see if there are any creatures with first strike or double strike. If there's no creatures with first strike or double strike, we just skip this. But if there is a single creature with first strike or double strike, then we will have a first strike damage step first. This is where creatures only with those keywords will assign their combat damage first. Each player will announce how they're going to split up all the damage, and this is before any players have any priority to be able to cast any spells or activate any abilities. After all the damage has been assigned, then we deal the actual damage, then any triggers that would have occurred would go on the stack. After that, players gain priority to be able to cast spells or activate abilities, then we go to regular combat damage, where it's the same thing over again. Except in regular combat damage, creatures with first strike won't deal any combat damage because they already dealt it, but creatures with double strike still get to deal their damage because that's what double strike does. Now for regular combat, after all triggers have been put on the stack, this is the last opportunity for players to be able to respond with spells or abilities before we move on to the end of combat. At end of combat, we put any triggers that would occur on the stack first, and then players gain priority. Even though it's called the end of combat step, we're still in the combat phase, so this is your last opportunity to use any mana from firebending before it's gone. And since we're still in the combat phase, anything that was attacking or blocking is still considered that, so this is your last opportunity to use effects like this. But as soon as we move out of there, we're out of combat and we're in the second main phase, so all the things that cared about combat is no longer in combat.